Hello, everybody. Welcome to Quantum Witch Cafe. It's been a while. I have missed everybody. You know, I love talking to authors about all sorts of different subjects. Tonight, we have the honor of talking to Rob Gutro. Gutro or Gutro? I apologize. I should have asked that beforehand. I've been saying
Gutro.
Gutro. Gutro is what I've been saying. So, yes, bear with me. Quantum Witch Cafe, if this is your first time listening, is your safe place to talk about anything fringe, paranormal, occult, UFOs mostly, UAP if you're fancy. But I am trying to get more of the paranormal field in here, more mediums, more different types of like cultures that people practice around, more types of like alternative lifestyles too. So I'm hoping to make things a little more different. There's a lot of UFO podcasts out there, and I love the UFO topic. You guys all know that, but I am itching to talk to some people about some different things. So, with all that being said, tonight we have Mr. Rob Gutro, and he is a medium. But I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. Rob, who are you? What do you do? And why are you doing it?
Hi, Priscilla. Thanks for having me for tonight. I really appreciate it. It's it's great to talk to you. Um, as for what I do, during the day, I'm actually a scientist. I'm a meteorologist. So I used to do weather forecasting. Now I'm behind the scenes, but that comes into play with what I do on the side, which is I am a medium. I call myself a pet medium, although I do talk to people on the other side as well. And a paranormal investigator. I'm an author of 10 books, three series of books. One series about pets in the afterlife, where I teach you how your pet communicates from the other side so that you know they're still with you. Um, Another series called Ghosts and Spirits. They're different. Ghosts are earthbound, spirits have crossed over, and we can talk about that as we go through. And then another series is kind of quirky, Ghosts on a Medium's Vacation, because every time I go on vacation, some dead people like to talk to me.
That's common, right? For mediums. I have a medium or two in the audience here. Crystal is the same. She's always got some we've done some fun stuff together in person, and I always hear her stories. There's always some spirit. If you're gifted and you have this ability, they're always popping in on vacations, right? Even in your hotel room sometimes. But I'm sure you're right about that.
I do actually, but yeah, I went to England and stayed in an old Tudor era castle. It turned bed and breakfast, and there was a gentleman who died in the 1500s that was haunting my room, and I figured out who he was.
That's amazing. That's so fun. Like I'm like the one that like gets the visions and gets the visitations. I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want no, sir. This is my vacation. There's people that like doing this like yourself and so I get the messages, but I'm just like, like I'm not ready to see you right now. But you can see the chat if there's anything you see you want to talk about in the chat. Just go ahead and address it, and I can highlight the comment. But so you travel, and you wrote a series about that as well. Like,
Yes. Yeah, so once a year I like to go on vacation. My husband and I like to go on vacation somewhere, and so I've written Ghosts of England on Medium's Vacation, and Ghosts of the Birdcage Theater in Tombstone, Arizona.
stop it.
Yeah,
I love it. That's so original. It's not weird. You said it was weird. No, you have your audience here. Like we love things that are original, and I love your approach to this. Like doing all that while you're traveling, and it seems like you're just into all of it.
well, it actually, interestingly enough, as a medium, I used to, whenever I go on a trip, I take a journal with me. And I used to do that because I like to write everything down so I can look back years later and remember the great vacation I had. But it turned out to be like a paranormal log, and then they became the basis of my books. So some of them.
That's awesome. You already have a question from Crystal. And I mean, it's a quiet chat right now. So if you're open to that, it kind of goes along with what we're talking about. Like, how did you get started? How did you find out that you could channel pets? And when did you start? Crystal is a medium as well. So she
Sure.
loves talking to other mediums.
Okay, great. Hi, Crystal. Well, this is the medium to talk to mediums, if you will. I love puns. um, So I have to go back quite a ways to when I was 13 years old, and I had my first experience. My grandfather, who died in December, um, appeared to me in July of the following year, and he scared the daylights out of me. He really, really put fear in me. So I was home alone uh, with the family dog, and I grabbed the dog after I saw him visibly appear and ran out. And I waited for my parents to arrive back from where they went. Long story short, my mother wound up confessing that it runs on her side of the family.
How does it happen like that? Like my grandma was the same way. I was like, this weird stuff's happening. She's like, oh yeah, you have the gift. I'm like, but you didn't think to tell me about this?
Yeah.
Just surprise. You can see dead things.
I think in my case, my mother was afraid of it, so she was hoping that neither myself or my two brothers got the gift because she was afraid. So, but I learned to use it to help people, and it took decades though because I ignored it. And then in 2005, to answer your question, Crystal, how I found out I could communicate with pets, I had a puppy, and his name was Buzz, and he's over here behind me. He's on the cover of Pets in the Afterlife one. He was a Weimaraner, 7 months old when he passed away. I was
Oh,
walking him. He saw a dog on the other side of the street. His
oh,
leash opened. He was killed by a car.
oh.
He started immediately as soon as I got home an hour later with his body. He started immediately sending me signs, musical signs, um, physical signs, all kinds of things. And as I said, I used to keep a journal, so I would write all these things down. That became the basis of my first book. And he opened the doors for me to communicate with other pets.
That's so beautiful, and he's a beautiful puppy. I got to babysit sorry, pet sit a Weimaraner, and he literally came and like put his paw and head on my leg and just like stayed there for like hours. It was just
Oh, that's awesome.
but his name was Ghost, and he passed eventually as my friend's dog. But it was I wanted to talk to you about like people can prepare for human deaths a little bit. I don't want to say more, but sometimes
Mhm.
you have more time to prepare when a human passes. Like we have our loved ones, they get sick, and I'm not, and sometimes it's sudden too. But I feel like when a pet passes, it hurts in such a different way. And so many people want to know, where did my baby go? Where is my pet? And because they will get these visions, right? Like after my cat died, I would just hear him running down me. And it took like to kind of like just is very beautiful. What happens to our pets as far as when they pass?
Well, I've learned quite a bit. And I'll address that, and then I will address why the grief is much more intense and can be much more intense. Because I have a lot
Yes.
of science in my books, like science of behaviors, psychology, all kinds of things, explained in very simple ways so that anybody can understand it. Because that's the way I like to read. I don't want to read it. I don't want to read like a term paper. I want to read something
Yeah,
I understand.
absolutely.
So so what happens with pets after they pass is that they, just like people, they the energy within them combines with memories, personality, and the knowledge of this life that they lived. People do the same thing. That energy combined with those things is what we call a soul. That's what a soul is, and every living thing has a soul. So once we pass, we make a choice to stay here earthbound at a fixed location of our choosing, somewhere we're familiar with. And that's what I call a ghost. 99% of pets cross over. I've only met three ghost pets. um, Otherwise, if you don't stay at a fixed location of your choosing, you cross over. You go to the other side where the light is, because and pets go to the other side because they can sense peace and love and tranquility on the other side. You know, just like they can sense when you're happy when you come home, when you're angry when you come home,
Yes.
when they
Yes.
do something bad and they go in the other room,
Oh.
they can sense the peace on the other side. So most of them cross over in spirit.
That makes a lot of sense. They're just so drawn. I mean, what they give us is so different than people, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
and
something special.
that's what makes it so hard when they pass. So the thing is that the lesson we're supposed to learn from them is unconditional love. In my experience with people, people can't give unconditional love. There's always a reason,
Yeah.
there's always something.
Yes.
Um, but pets don't have that kind of love. So that's one part that makes it really hard when they pass. But the other part is that we raise them like children. When you think about
We
it,
do.
we give them pet names, we give them nicknames, if you will, as well, like we give our human children. We take them to school to teach them obedience. We take them to the doctor. We teach them how to play well with others. We teach them how to go to the bathroom. um, they learn routine. They learn how to interact socially with other animals. It's the same thing that we do with human children, except that um, pets only live to be 14, 15 years old. And I always say, Priscilla, that they don't leave the house, grow up, and marry someone you don't like.
No, they don't. They they it's you don't have to worry about as much, right?
Exactly.
Just their short lives though. It's so
Yeah. So
unfair.
because we raise them like children, we look at them that way. And to us, children should not outlive their parents. And that's the psychological aspect that makes it so difficult to deal with their passing.
That makes perfect sense. Guys, I'm starring your questions and comments that seem like they're going to fit in, and I will incorporate them as we go. But that makes total sense. Like right now, what did I just say about dog sitting? Said I'm babysitting.
Mhm.
And I don't have a pet right. I mean, I have a snake right now, but I don't have like a fur baby right now because I have two kids, and I just know that my attention's already divided. So, um, yeah, so people experience a loss of them, and like you said, we treat them like family, like our kids, and like you said, we don't want them to, and they're just so pure. We don't want to outlive them, but we know it's inevitable. Crystal just lost her baby last week, and it was um, a strange coincidence. And you're a medium, so I'm sure you understand a lot of synchronicities the way some people don't. He was supposed to actually he was scheduled to be put down. And I know Krista won't mind me
Mhm.
sharing that she's talked about it. She's very open with it. Like he was originally scheduled to be put down like today. And I was like, that's very interesting because I'm having like a pet medium on that day. And so hopefully, this can shed some light on it. Um, and Crystal, we're so sorry about your loss. He's such a sweet puppy. But
Absolutely.
other puppies come into our lives, after our loved ones pass. And sometimes our pets will prepare us for that in ways. Have you ever had
Mhm.
that experience of a pet preparing somebody like, okay, I'm going to leave or I'm gone, but keep an eye out for this type of animal next week or, something like that? Have you had that experience?
Sure. That's one of the ways that pets convey that they're still around us. They will lead us to the next pet that they want us to adopt. And I've talked to many people who have had that experience. Um, Recently, I was at an event, and a woman told me that she wanted to adopt another dog, but she did not want another dog that was black and white that looked like the dog that she just lost. So she went to a shelter. She found a brown dog, medium sized dog that she really got attached to. She put in the paperwork to adopt the dog. She came the next week to get the dog, and they had adopted the dog out. And she said, "Well, I really want to adopt a dog." So they brought her a black and white dog that looked like her dog that
Oh my
passed. And
goodness.
she said she was a little freaked out about it, but she realized that her dog wanted her to adopt a dog that looked like her because her dog is going to be around in spirit training the new dog, and that's what happened.
Oh, do you hear that, guys? That is sometimes our little guys train our next pets, and they're their buddies. That's see, Crystal said that's what happened. That's what Chance did. That is so. That is so. Now my cat was mean. He was like, "You gotta wait and mourn me." No, he was very sassy about it. He's just like, he wasn't really, but his attitude, he was like a grumpy old man. So like, I'm not ready. My heart's not ready, and he hasn't came and been like, "Go get a cat." So that's wild, And I never even heard of that until it happened to her. That's why I asked, because I'm like, you know, I
Mhm.
maybe it like I don't know. Like I have heard of it, but I haven't like really met anybody close to me that's been through it. So, thank you for sharing that because that's something so beautiful.
Sure. I do want to go back to Crystal's dog that passed a week
Yeah.
before. So, what I've learned from talking to spirits, dogs and cats in spirit, is that they know when we are getting ready to help them cross over because they can read our emotional energy. They know when we're stressed, and they know that their body is not working the way they want it to. So, sometimes a pet will pass and just let themselves go before that date because they know that if when the pet parent would bring them into the vet, it would be much too traumatic for them to see it. So it's just like people. When my mother had a stroke and she was not going to recover, um, she wanted to pass on her own and didn't want anybody in the hospital room to see her pass because she knew that it would be too traumatic for us, and that's the last vision we would have of her. Pets do the same thing. They want us to remember them as healthy and active, and that's why Crystal, your pet, your dog, passed before the vet appointment.
Oh, why does this touch people so much? I'm like Ice Queen, but when it comes to pets and animals, I'm like, it's just it's it's not something that's talked about a lot. We talk a lot about like grandpa visiting us, right? Or like you're in a like I'm living in a haunted house right now. Like I have a spirit here and she is very like residual sometimes and then she snaps out of it. It's like, "Wait, I'm dead?" Like what happened? Like, so we've been through that many times together and she's very sweet when she's around, so no complaints from the spirit here, but um so thank you for touching on that. I know that means a lot to Crystal too. So once our pets pass, there's the whole concept of reincarnation. And it's funny that
Mhm.
Jessica asked this question because it's on my little list. I was going to ask about pet, you know, reincarnation. This seems to be coming like very organically with the questions in the chat and what I wanted to ask. So another good synchronicity, right? Jessica has a question about pet reincarnation. Do pets reincarnate as humans and vice versa? And I don't know why I butchered that word. Reincarnate.
So, in my experience, the answer is no. They pretty much stay to the animal kingdom. Humans stay to the human kingdom. Um, they could come back as a different animal, by all means, but whatever they do, they are going to be connected to you in the next life. That's what I have experienced. Um, I often tell people who say that they think that they were a cat or a dog in a previous life. I said, well, if you have a tendency to lick your hand, you may have been a cat. But um,
Cats aren't normal animals either.
you know, and you know how dogs greet other dogs sometimes. They,
Oh my gosh. Can you
yeah.
imagine?
So you don't want to be.
I don't know. Some men out there, right? I'm just kidding.
Well, there you go.
Oh, Annie.
So no, they they reincarnate as other animals. But there's a caveat to that too, is that they do not come back in this lifetime. They absolutely do not come back in this lifetime. Instead, what they do is they come back and they train your new pet to have a habit or two that they had when they were alive. Because some people have said to me, well, I think my dog is reincarnated in the dog that I just adopted because he's showing one or two of the same habits. And I said, that's not what's happened. What's happened is your dog is waiting in spirit for you. And all of you who have lost your dog is waiting in the light, or cat, or horse, or bird, waiting in the light for you. But in the meantime, when you adopt another one, they will come back and they will train your dog or cat to do something they used to do, and it doesn't have to be a good habit. Just so you know.
That's very interesting. I've never really thought about pets reincarnating, to be honest. I've thought about a lot of people because I kind of talk to people about that a lot. But that's interesting that they stay in the animal kingdom. Is there some sort of? Are you aware of any reason for that, or is there like a type of spirit or soul that only is supposed to be animalistic, or is this all just we don't know? It's just happening.
We really don't know the answers to that, but my guess is that they're much more pure of heart.
Oh, okay. That definitely makes sense. Because even the most ferocious animals are pure of heart. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
they are just like people are afraid of bears, right? But like the bear spirit is so strong and pure. Like it'd be a really, really strange human if it came
Yeah,
back as a human. Just see somebody at the top of a waterfall catching salmon. Yeah, that'd be strange. So I see, Annie, I'm so sorry about your loss. Let's see. Oh, I hate. I mean, it's so painful to lose a pet. Like everybody can agree with that. So here's an interesting question. Do they have from Sylvain? Thank you for showing up, Sylvain. It's very nice of you to join. And everybody in the live chat, thank you so much for coming through. Do they have some type of mission after they pass away, maybe? Or do they go into like healed light, or like you, besides the mission of training our pets, do they do anything else?
they do. They can protect us, and sometimes they will nudge us to go and do something that we don't feel like we wanted to do, but we do something different for our own benefit. And our pets can be spirit guides as well as
Oh,
people.
wow.
Um, so they can protect us. Sometimes pets will come back and they will patrol the house at night in spirit, and you may hear their nails on the floor. You may hear their collar jingle. You
The
may hear,
collar.
yeah, you may hear them sneeze. You may hear them bark or meow from another part of the household. Um, and sometimes they could be in the same room and it sounds like it's in another room. That's because it takes a lot of energy
Okay.
to make a noise. And that goes back to all the energy that I was talking about, is that they need spirits, even pets, pets and people, as energy with personality, memories, and knowledge. They need physical energies like heat, light, water, and electricity to
Mm.
get strong enough to communicate, or they need emotional energy, love, faith, and hope for spirits who've crossed
Oh,
over. Ghosts, earthbound ghosts, rely on fear, anxiety, and depression to get
mm.
strong enough to communicate.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's one of the differentiations that I'm wondering you could touch on is there was a teacher that I took a mediumship class with, and she was saying, ghosts are more residual and bound, and then like spirits are like the ones that interact. Is there, I mean, I'm sure every medium has their own way of talking about these things,
Mhm.
but what would bind, I guess, would you call a spirit that doesn't interact with you more residual energy? Or can it be both? Like in the case of Gertie in this house, like I feel like I see her going up and down the stairs to the kitchen, but she doesn't interact very often unless I'm like actively like, hey, how's it going? So, what is your experience with that?
So to me, she would be an intelligent haunt that just doesn't have the either energy or the desire to interact with anybody very much. Just like living with a roommate. Sometimes they just
Right.
don't want to talk to you, and other times they do. Um, so with in terms of residual and intelligent, so intelligent haunts I found are ones that interact with you on some level. Residual to me is like a thumbprint of emotional energy in a location. It's like putting your thumb on the glass, a pane of glass, and when the sun shines through it, you can see it. You can see the thumbprint. But when the sun doesn't shine through it, you can't see it. It's just like that with residual energy. If somebody had an emotional experience in a home or a building, they impress that energy on the structure. When you bring your emotional energy into the room, you are adding energy to
Mm.
make that light up, if you will. So
Okay.
You can sense somebody's depression or somebody's happiness if you go into a building or a house. That's what residual energy is to me.
Okay. So when you say the term ghost, do you mean the spirit? Is this not? It's synonymous with spirit when you're talking about it.
No, ghosts are earthbound. So they're
Okay.
both energy entities, but ghosts are earthbound in a fixed location, like
Okay.
like the ghost in your house.
Yes.
She can't go anywhere
Oh.
because
Okay.
she chose to stay in that location for the
Right.
rest of her afterlife until somebody can cross her over.
Okay.
So, so for instance, I encountered the ghost of John Wilkes Booth in the Ford's Theater.
Oh
Didn't
wow.
want to, didn't know he was there, but and he's a jerk.
He's just there. I mean, I
Um,
would imagine he's not very,
he's there because it was his most proudest twisted moment in his life. He doesn't want to go anywhere because he's afraid to cross over, thinking the other side is going to put him into a very, very bad place.
Mm,
Um, so that's why he decided to stay there, and he's not moving. Spirits, on the other hand, like our cats and dogs, they cross over. They can visit us anywhere, anytime in the
okay.
world. Doesn't matter. I had Buzz lead me to another dog that looked exactly like him when I was on vacation in San Juan, Puerto Rico,
Oh
and it
wow.
turned out on the exact day of his passing, 4 years later.
Oh my goodness.
So spirits will come around usually on birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays. Anniversaries, like in terms of pets, with their adoption or their passing or something like that.
That's very interesting. Yeah, because we don't really think about stuff like that until it happens, right? I mean, or sometimes it happens and then it doesn't click till later. So um, sometimes they try to tell us things ahead of time. I wanted to ask you, have you personally caught glimpses, before I get to the next question, have you been shown the other side? Like have by either a human spirit, or have you been there yourself, or has an animal explained it to you? I know that sounds wild, people, but like telepathically they can tell us stuff. And you know this if you've had pets, right? But what is, is there another, is on the other side, is there a such thing as like a low vibrational place like a hell, or is it mostly moving into a healed space or a healing space?
So, yeah, the only way that I've had it explained to me by different human spirits is that there are like three levels. But when you cross over, it's all good. I mean, it's peaceful, but you put yourself at there's a lower, medium, and higher level, and you choose what level you go on based on how you lived your life here and what you think you deserve. So there's I found that there's no hell on the other side. It's just low, medium, and high energy. So, and I know that because my own aunt, who passed away in 1984, kept coming to me as a low level spirit, trying to get to a higher level by getting forgiveness from my mother, because she missed my aunt was not very nice to my mother throughout much of her life, and that's how I learned about the different levels. Pets always go to the top level, always. It's people who have hangups, and that's why there are two other levels.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, because they don't have like the materialism that we have, and attachments to our own body. This is something I talk to people a lot about. Is that um, not all what like it never made sense to me to think like a cemetery would be super haunted unless the spirit was attached to their body in some
Mhm.
way. And I could be wrong about that, but that's just kind of been like my experience while being in cemeteries. Not that I'm the weird girl that walks through cemeteries, but I'm the weird girl that walks through cemeteries. They're just so peaceful, right? So, and a lot of them are beautiful, and especially on the East Coast. So,
Yeah, so my husband and I like to go in cemeteries with the dogs and just take nice walks and read the stones and acknowledge people that passed away. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
right with you.
Yeah, we're just spooky people, I guess. Yeah, there's one up the road here. I'm in Baltimore, so I haven't been able to go to the historic cemeteries yet, and I plan on doing it once it cools off. But the one close to here, there is stones all the way back to the 1800s, and it's just like, wow, like you been here for so long, but I don't feel a lot of spiritual activity there. And unless they're very bound to their bodies, like my experience, it's only a few experiences, so that they could have been, you had way more than me, but it makes sense. So many people are afraid to go to cemeteries because they think there's going to be a ton of ghosts or spirits, and you're like, maybe, but most of them tend to go back right to like
Mhm.
where they want to be if they choose to be earthbound. Am I right about that, or is that just something that I've
Yeah.
experienced?
So my experience is that yes, when you're there and you're in the cemetery and you're paying tribute to someone, if you go to someone's gravesite and you say a prayer or you put flowers or something, that you are sharing love. That positive energy will draw that spirit to visit you while you are there at the grave. And there have been stories of a mother whose son was killed in Iraq, and she went there, and then there were dragonflies suddenly materialized, spinning around her son's gravesite, and he loved dragonflies. And then
Wow.
when she was about to walk away, they disappeared.
So it's just
So
making that connection then, right?
yeah,
So, but it's not like spooky in a way. I mean, could you do that the opposite way? Like this is like, say it's some murderer's grave and you're like, "Ooh, I'm afraid of you." Could that potentially draw that spirit to you as well, or does it tend to be more of the other way around?
it's really more love.
Okay.
Love
That's what I've
love.
experienced, but I
Yeah.
want to ask cuz
Yeah, and I never really. I've been to a lot of cemeteries, and there's only one man that haunts a cemetery, and that's in Scotland. Because he used to go there and hide from people who he stole money from.
Oh, okay. That
Yeah.
makes so he was
So,
kind of like at home there. So he's just like, I'll go back home, I guess.
exactly, and he was a really bad guy. But
Yeah.
for the most part, cemeteries aren't haunted, and the only time spirits show up is when you're there to pay tribute to them.
That's a beautiful, and that makes sense why people connect when they go visit, you know, their loved ones. Because to me, like it doesn't. Maybe it's just because I understand and I felt like how thin, like maybe like the spirit world is with us. It's like right, it's like parallel to us almost. So like to me, going to a gravesite to say bye to grandpa or go visit grandpa, it doesn't do it for me, but it makes sense that, like you said, it makes sense now that you said it. People go there and that's their way of connecting, and it channels that love and then it channels them. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because I never understood that personally. Um, and I'm always just like, burn me and plant me like when I die. But like to other people, that's not the case. That's how they connect with their loved ones. So I'm glad that you said that.
Mhm.
So I have a question from Jessica, the cute little
Okay.
puppy. Rob, have you had any experience with a pet that was earthbound and was seeking to help cross over?
I've had experience with three pets, and none of them wanted to cross over because when they decided to stay because they were attached to their pet parent. And again, that's really rare.
Oh,
None of them wanted to cross over because they were happy doing what they were doing as an earthbound ghost. So there was one little dog that I wrote about in my Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation book, who belonged to Mr. and Mrs. John Soane of London. He was a famous architect. And I found out this little dog belonged to Mrs. Soane. He was the first thing I saw when I opened the door to the museum, which used to be their house. And I said, "There's a little black and tan dog running around in here." And of course, my husband was like, "There's no dog in here. There's a museum." And I said, "No, no, no, there is. It's a ghost
that is so
dog."
funny.
So the docents actually confirmed it. So the story's in that book, but um, I asked the dog if he wanted to cross over and be with his mom and dad, and he said no. He loves greeting people at the door every day. He gets very
Oh,
excited. So
he's having fun.
yeah,
That's adorable. Yeah, I didn't. It doesn't seem like a lot linger around for much longer. I've heard of them. Like I've heard of people having the feeling that like they hang out with you until you're ready, until you're okay. Honestly, because they love us so much.
mhm.
So I've heard of that. So that's interesting that you've only met a few because it just I just feel like I don't know a lot about the pet mediumship, so that's why everything's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Um,
So sometimes they'll hang around, but mostly they won't.
they just okay, and then but they're able to like human spirits kind of come back and forth to visit.
Absolutely. They do it all the time around birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays, especially
Oh,
because they read our energy. They know our energy levels, our emotional energy is elevated, and they want to be around us when we're very happy or when we're very depressed or sad. They want to be.
yeah. It's funny how they know that. Like I got super bad morning sickness with my first son, and there was one night where I felt my husband was gone training because he's military, and I was like so sick, and you check when you're pregnant sometimes, and I was like passing out by the toilet, and
Oh
my
yeah.
cat's like was like a grumpy old man. Like it was very on his terms, but I loved him for it. I used to call him my old wizard because he had like a beard, and he was a gray long hair cat, but he I'm like falling asleep by the toilet, and I just feel like this paw like on my shoulder, just like go to bed. That's what it felt like. And he never like fussed over me. Like we had like such a beautiful relationship, but he was like not, he was like, if he was a person, he'd be like that person that was like tough love. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
stop whining, it's fine. So
Right.
it was so, but he knew that I was about to like pass out on the bathroom floor. So his little paw was just like, he like puffy
Uh,
pawed me and basically told me to go to bed. So let's move on to some other animals. Have you had experience? Sylvain wants to know, what about animals like dolphins or wild animals? Do they go to the same place or maybe a similar place like the others?
so everybody goes to the same place. Um, all wild animals go the same place that pets and people go. There's there's no difference, except as we said before, animals tend to go to the higher level on the other side. As a medium, though, as a pet medium, I can't read wild animals that have passed away. And the reason is because they don't live with us. They don't know our habits, our language, our behavior. There's nothing that they know of us that we can relate to. So I can't get anything from them.
Oh, interesting. Have you seen them before? Like maybe if you're going through like a zoo or some sort of like animal rescue, do you sense like the animals that have passed there, or is it just kind of like they leave because, like you said, I wonder like in a zoo because they're a little more domesticated and they're with people more often if that changes anything.
They tend, they're really, because they're more wild, their instinct is to go to the light first.
Okay.
So, and that somebody asked me once, are there dinosaur ghosts? And the answer is
Oh,
no, because they all went into the light, just like all the wild animals go into the light.
oh, sweet little dinosaurs or big dinosaurs. They're just like, oh, guess this is it. Back to the light.
Right.
I've heard, and one of my questions for you, and this is like not to make it spooky or anything, but like I've heard there was a woman's that there I saw this woman talking about pet mediumship a long time ago.
Mhm.
And she had said that there was a horse that had a baboon spirit in it. And that's why the horse was so mean until it was acknowledged. It was met this baboon spirit was mad that it was reincarnated into a horse. Have
Hmm.
you ever experienced anything like that where like maybe the spirit's like, why am I back as like a cat when I was a lion last time? Like cats already think that, but you know what I mean? Like, have you ever experienced anything like that?
No, I haven't. Because for the most part, when we come back, we don't remember our past lives.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
and one of the ways, by the way, that people, I don't know how pets can remember a past life, but one of the ways that people can remember a past life is if you're drawn to something or some place or somewhere in time that you've never been. That happened to me with Tombstone, Arizona. When I saw the
Oh,
film in 1993,
really?
everything clicked, and I thought this looks really familiar. When I got there, I was able to give directions to a tourist the minute I got there how to get to the courthouse without ever being there before
Oh
in the
my,
1990s, before the internet, before maps, before phones, before everything. And my friend who was with me was dumbfounded. He said, "Did you just give that guy bum directions?" And it turned out I did not. And
oh.
and I figured out that I had a past life there. So
Now, did you
so
do a
that's in
regression? Did you
that's
do a
my Ghost and Birdcage book.
I love the birdcage. Yeah. So, did you do a regression to find that out, or were bits and pieces coming back to you? And also very interesting because people always talk about like I was a knight. I was in Atlantis. I was in Egypt. But I don't hear a lot of people saying I was a cowboy in Tombstone, Arizona, or I was in the Wild West. So how did you have you learned more about that since that experience, and how did you learn about that?
I did a mild past life regression, and no, I wasn't a cowboy. I was a miner, and I had a
Oh
dog.
wow.
I had a hound dog, and I lived in a wooden shack, and that's what.
Oh.
And I remember seeing my boots.
Wow.
So no, it wasn't a glorious life by any means, you
I
know.
don't think anything was actually glorious in those times. It sounds like a hard life no matter what role you play.
It is. By the way, I see something in the chat. Somebody wants to know if I sense the non-human intelligence.
Oh, okay. Let me see who's that. Pet Earthbound. Oh, okay. Here is George. Hi, George. George is like my main guy. Like he's always here. He's one of my mods, and he lives up to the namesake of Curious George. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's a great question, George. As usual, my question: has he even sensed? Oh, sorry, I can't read right now. Have you sensed non-human intelligence, creatures, or aliens?
So I have sensed something that was non-human um, once, and as a scientist, I have a theory about this.
Oh,
Um, I know that we have discovered over 7,800 exoplanets. Those are planets that are in other star systems, and some of them are bound to have life. There's another 5,000 planets that we've also discovered that we're cataloging right now that may also have planets in what's called the Goldilocks zone or the habitable zone that support life. So we would be foolish to think that we are the only life in the
right.
cosmos. So my theory about the non-human intelligence creatures or aliens is that these are these are the energies, the spirits of these living things from other universes that come here, and just like human spirits do, but they come here and they act defensive. Sometimes they can even act like a cornered animal. And
Hmm.
this is what I think people call demons or, dark entities or something,
Right.
because they had to come from somewhere. So that's my theory.
That makes a lot of sense. And the one that you encountered, how was it behaving, or how did it present itself to you?
It was unreadable.
Oh, okay.
It was just a feeling of hostility and insecurity,
Okay.
I knew it wasn't a person, and I knew it wasn't an animal. I didn't know what to call it.
Okay.
So therefore, that's what triggered all of this. That, you know, it had to be a life form from somewhere else.
That makes sense because we don't really think of their perspective coming from UFO world because I'm mostly a UFO researcher, and I am also like I have my paranormal witchy side. So it all fascinates me. I just like all the strange things, of course. But I never really, one of my other friends had said something like that about the grays. She's like, well, people are afraid of the gray aliens, right? But then she's like, I feel like she worries about them because if like what are they going to do if they end up crashed here, like we think like we've had UFO crashes and recovered bodies and all this stuff. So you're probably only like maybe the second or third person I've had like address like the emotional state of why these beings are giving off the vibe they're giving. Maybe they're not trying to hurt us, maybe they're just afraid, or they found themselves in a place they don't understand, or
Exactly.
just imagine yourself going on another planet and you'd be a little nervous and your energy would be a little off.
Right.
So,
And
so
you'd be
like
defensive.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So
So you're a paranormal investigator as well, you said, right?
yes,
So have you heard of Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky?
yes.
Okay, so there's a floor there that has said to have like tons of shadow beings. And people say shadow being, shadow being, shadow being. And I've experienced them since I was a little girl. Just my grandma was a medium. So I think that when you have some sort of like a activated thing inside of you, it feels like either you just see them more because you have the sight for it, or almost it's like you're a beacon and they're like, oh, what's that? And they're curious about you. So the shadow beings, people are so afraid of them. However, when I went to Waverly, I was like, oh, these are just people like walking around. Like it's not as devious as people try to make it. So shadow beings, what is your thought about those? Because a lot of people experience them.
Yes. So I have, as a scientist, for me, I have to go back to energy. So I think of a ghost or a spirit as a being of energy, like a light bulb on a dimmer switch. If they have enough energy, you turn up that dimmer switch so the light bulb is fully visible, it's in full color. But if they don't have enough energy, that dimmer switch is all the way down, and the only thing you can see is the outline of the form. So it's a shadow. It looks like a shadow figure. So it's a human or an animal that doesn't have enough energy to become fully visible.
That makes a lot of sense too. You're answering so many questions that I personally had, and then I'm glad the chat's asking
Thank
this.
you. It
Because when
helps to
I
be a scientist because for me,
right.
I have to explain all this in science, and I've actually come up with an explanation for cold spots too.
Oh, really? Let's hear it. Because a lot of people experience that. Like, they'll be like, oh, well, I just got to chill and I knew something was there. It's so common for that. So,
Mhm.
how do you explain a cold spot? Because I know a lot of people have theories, but I really want to hear yours, especially since you have such a scientific background and you've been doing this for so long. I feel like okay, just tell me. I'm going
So
on.
sure.
I'm ranting.
So again, think of them. Remember that they are energy, and as energy, they need energy to get strong enough to communicate. So if there's no energy around, they can get it from the motion of air molecules. And how they do that is they absorb the motion of air molecules. They absorb that energy from the motion, and when they do that, they slow the movement of the molecules down. So slow moving molecules of air are colder air. The Arctic is filled with slow moving molecules of air. Fast moving molecules of air, like the tropics, are warm air. So when they take that energy out of fast moving molecules of air, they slow them down, and that creates a cold spot where the ghost or the spirit want to manifest.
That makes a lot of sense. And that should be so, like, there's not a lot of people able to catch that with you would think that like we'd see more FLIR um like footage of this sort of stuff. And I sat there with my FLIR for like an hour at Waverly Hills in the dark, and I was just like, this is cool. And like I kind of saw some stuff in the background, but I couldn't really I have a little bit of a science background, but molecular biology. So it's not so much what you've
Cool.
studied. So I like all the nerdy stuff. I love all the technical stuff.
That's
But
awesome.
I was just like, well, it could be this and that. It could be a cold draft. And there was not something that was just like bam, like that's different. So I kind of never really like went back to the footage because I was not seeing anything that was obvious. And sometimes these things are subtle, but when you're trying to present things from an investigation, you kind of it needs to be a little more obvious for people, or else they're gonna be like, you're reaching. So
Mhm.
I'm glad that you said that because that makes a lot of sense. So I have another George question, and thank you to everybody in the chat. Your guys' questions, like I don't even want to ask my bullet points or my questions because you guys are like they're kind of like weaving in. I'm like, oh well, that's similar to what I wanted to know, or it would have led to that too. So thank you for being in the chat, everybody. Can you only sense higher level life forms, say above a rat or some such? So like higher, uh, maybe you
So I,
understand my question.
I can sense I can sense basically anything that comes near me, but I can communicate with any domesticated pet. So yes, I have communicated with rats and gerbils, rabbits, horses, birds, and so forth. As a matter of fact, a rabbit that I did a reading for or with, named Wudge, Wudge. He gave me a quote that stays with me, and he says, "Love is something you should never apologize for." This is wisdom from a rabbit in spirit.
Oh, sweet little
And
rabbit.
and he was talking about how his dad had to help him cross over. and he said, "Love is never something you have to apologize for," and that
Wow,
really stuck with me. That's
that's
so
beautiful.
amazing.
That is so beautiful. Like you could apply that to your life, and this comes from a rabbit. But we
Yes.
think about like, like these, like you said before, like they are so pure, like their energy's just so, it's a little more, well, I can't remember the word you used. Why they stayed in a certain animal kingdom, like their energy is different from ours. So they
Mhm.
understand love more than us. There's not so much the animosity there and all that. And it seems like when animals act like that, they're either sick or they are afraid. It's like instinctual protection stuff. Now, I don't think there's any animals that are like, people joke like, oh, my cat's evil, but they aren't actually. There might be something else going on with like their energy. Like my cat, after I had my son, was like not happy because they're used to being our only babies.
Mhm.
Well, one night he bit me in the head. Like I was dead asleep and I was like, this fuck, why is he like this?
Oh my
And
god.
he had never been like, he'd always been kind of like aloof as a cat is, especially when you're a beautiful fancy wizard like him. But he like straight up bit me in the head. And it took me years to realize like he was seeing, I had postpartum really bad. He was seeing all this dark activity like around my brain, in
Oh
my
my god.
mind, and he was trying to like get it. I don't know any other way to put it, and I didn't understand it till after he passed why he was doing that. And at the
Hmm.
time, I'm like, "You damn cat! I've got a baby. Like, why are you doing this to me? I need to sleep. Why are you biting my face?" So let's see.
Yeah,
So
they want to protect us for sure.
they do, and they're so sweet about. Like he was declawed when I adopted him. I would not do that to a cat personally, but he was already like that. So that would explain some of his like kind of like behavior around things too, because like I know it causes like discomfort in their paws over time. So poor little guy. But yeah, he was just trying to protect me, and I was just like, let me sleep, you mean cat. Why do you hate me? And it took years to realize like, no, he didn't hate you. He was like trying to like help you. And he didn't know how, and he saw it. So because I feel like animals can sort of see things that we can't.
They
Are you able to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they can actually. That's something I address in all my books too. Is that that scientifically, dogs and cats have different cones and rods in their eyes than we do, and they can see faster movement. We use high-speed cameras as paranormal investigators to catch faster movement, which are
Mm.
spirits or ghosts. Dogs and cats also can hear at different frequencies that we can't hear at. If you think of a dog whistle, and we have to use digital recorders to pick those frequencies up to hear a ghost or a spirit. So they can hear and see spirits and ghosts, spirits that visit. So that's why if your dog or cat had a companion that passed, right after the companion passed, they may be staring at nothing
Yeah.
and staring at their companion who is visiting in spirit.
Yeah, and we hear that too with paranormal activity, right? Like somebody's pet will be staring off into a direction and a spirit will manifest there or some sort of like poltergeist type activity. We are coming up on the hour. We have 8 minutes. So we have some choices. Are there things that you didn't get to talk about that you wanted to address tonight?
Um, a couple of things. Number one, for anyone who has to make that choice for their pet, know that your pet understands that it's very difficult because they can read your emotions and they don't want you to ever feel guilty about helping them cross over and find peace. Never. Instead, I always get thank you from the other side. Number two, they always want us to remember them when they were younger and they were more active. So for the person that lost their 18-year-old dog, your dog in spirit wants you to remember them as a younger, more vibrant dog. Um, that's why some pets, as I mentioned at the beginning, some pets will pass when we're not there. And they don't want us to feel guilty for that either because they made that choice. So there are a whole bunch of things. I could talk to you for another 2 hours about all this, but
I know, I'm the same. I'm
those
like,
are
this
important.
hour flew by. That's beautiful. And you're touching some hearts here in the audience. Crystal said, stop. I needed that. And I'm sure so many people did. Let's see. So, do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
I'll let you pick. So, we have a few questions in the chat. They're kind of, one is from George, Jessica, Annie. Um, Penhurst. We have some questions about Penhurst, and then we have some questions about um, how do you shut that side off of yourself, which I think is a cool question, because not that the other ones aren't cool, guys, but like I told Rob an hour, so I gotta so
So I
like,
can answer a couple of questions real quick.
oh,
So,
perfect.
yep. So one, for the most part, I can shut it off if I am focused on something. It's like I used to work in radio, so you always have to hear things in the background and know things are going on, but you can tune them out and focus on something. That's how I'm able to do that. The oldest spirit I've encountered, gosh, there was spirits from the 15 ghosts, earthbound ghosts from the 1500s, 1400s, 1100s when I went to England. Um, so those are the oldest, and they're in my Ghosts of England book. Um,
So cool.
and yes, ghosts will come and talk at odd hours. I cannot sleep in a haunted room or a hotel because they wake me up.
Do you ever
Because
walk into an Airbnb? You're like, nope, we gotta go.
oh
We
yeah,
can't stay here. Oh,
yeah. to I went to a town in Pennsylvania, New Hope,
oh,
most
okay.
haunted town ever. We had reservations that night in a motel. I could not stay there because the energy was so dark and
Mm.
so oppressive. That's where part of the Revolutionary War was fought.
Oh, wow.
We had to just leave and pay the bill without staying. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's probably more common on the East Coast because there's so much history on the East Coast that you can't go someplace without like encountering some sort of spirit. And if you're like me, like I'm just like, "Ugh," like I can talk to the aliens, but don't bother. I'm not really like that. If a spirit comes to me, because they do, it's and they're like they come at me the right way, and I feel like I have the energy to like tap in safely for myself because I'm an empath, still trying to get a hold on all that. So, and when energy's drained, I had to find somewhere else to get more, and it turns into a whole like energy sucker situation with me. I got to go lay on the ground outside, and it's all sorts of weirdness. So I don't know how to handle like channeling spirits very optimally, I guess. Let's see. I think that was all the questions you have. Again, some people saying, thank you. You're giving a lot of confirmation to people. Let's see. Have you been to Penhurst? That's one of the questions. And have you had any experiences if you've been there?
I have not, but I have been to one prison and I've been to hospitals, and there are a lot of dead people in both. And I have been to Gettysburg, and I can't go to Gettysburg anymore because it's like 10,000 people screaming at me at the same
Wow.
time. So it's just overwhelming.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds overwhelming
yeah.
for sure. Okay, let's see. People just love like when you can sense when somebody's like a legit medium and they probably just want to talk to you like forever about things because everybody's experienced death, right, in
Yeah.
one way or another. Even a plant, sometimes, my goodness, I get attached to plants, so if one dies,
Mhm.
like I just
And
can't.
I have to confess, Priscilla, that I do not like to deal with physical death. I
Uh-huh.
don't mind talking to people who have passed or pets who have passed, but the physical aspect of it kind of creeps me out. Um, it
In
creeps me
what way?
out.
That's interesting.
It makes me uncomfortable. Um, I will say though that my mother cracked me up after she passed because when she was in her when she was during her wake, she was in her in the casket, and she said to me, I walked over to her and she said to me, "Can you do me a favor and darken my eyebrows because they didn't do it right?" And
Oh,
I st- she was very much into being made up, and I laughed out loud. My husband came over and he said, "Is your mother talking to you?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You are not putting your hand in there to fix her hair." So they can make you laugh too.
yeah, that I remember. Crystal was actually doing a reading for me, and my grandma told her she was shuffling the cards wrong because, like, my grandma did. She did cartomancy with playing cards. Like, I'd like sneak and I'd watch her. She'd be doing her mediumship readings and her card readings, and I'd get in trouble if I got caught. But it was just funny because Crystal was like, she told her, and my grandma was very sassy. So like I knew it was her because she's very like bossy and as a matter of fact, but like in a funny way, in a tough love way. So I believe that George has one more question, but I want to ask you, like, you gave the two beautiful messages out about what people, two things that you want to talk about. Do you have any other books in the works, or are you having any more appearances that you want to talk about?
Oh gosh. All of the above. Yep.
I do have your website in the description. Is
Okay.
that the best way for people to sort of, reach out to you?
Yeah, there's an events tab on there. I'm doing a lot of appearances in New Hampshire and Maine and Massachusetts. I'm
Oh,
going to paracons, but mostly I go to animal rescues and do fundraisers where I teach people how pets communicate from the afterlife.
that's very
So,
cool. That's very
um,
cool.
yep. Also working on my next book in the Medium's Vacation series, Ghosts of Ireland and Scotland on the Medium's
Oh,
Vacation.
wow.
So, and I have 6 or 7 other books, all half written. So,
That sounds
just crazy.
that sounds like a cool series.
And I
That
do
is
pet readings on the weekends, by the way.
very cool.
But
So
I'm booked a year out.
I was gonna say, I would imagine if you only do them on the weekends and you are as good as you are, that you get filled pretty fast. I mean, you can tell a genuine person, honestly. Like, I'm more of like an energy worker type of person. So like when I meet somebody and I can tell they're just like, ugh, I just like side eye. But you don't seem like that. And I can see why all the pets come to you and all the spirits come to you because you have a very sweet and understanding energy about you. And it seems like you're open and you're not going to judge a spirit, be like evil. You know what I mean? So I love that about you. So let's see, guys, we are on the hour, and I told Rob I would not keep him all night. I don't know what time zone you're in, honestly, but I probably could have looked at your LinkedIn and been like, oh, he's in that state. But I'm like a vampire. I gotta like have late hours, mostly because of my kids. Um, but thank you for staying up late with us, and thank you for answering all your questions. Everybody's questions in the chat. You guys were spot on with a lot of the bullet points that I had already and questions that I had. So it's been a beautiful conversation. I felt like it flowed nicely, and if you guys want to find Rob and his work, he's on Amazon, and he is also has his own website, and that's what I have linked, and that will take you everywhere. Thank you to anybody that's joining now, later, in some other place, maybe on a Goldilocks planet, listening to this. But it was so great to have you, Rob, hang out after the show. Do you have any last words? I know that sounds horrible, but
I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and I love questions. So you can send questions to rgutro@gmail.com. And I use questions and answers for blog posts and social media posts because if you have a question, somebody else does too. Um,
for sure. Yeah.
and just remember that the love of your pets lasts forever, and they'll all be waiting for you on the other side.
Oh, perfect ending point, guys. Thank you so much. And thanks, George, for getting that in the chat. Everybody have a beautiful night. I will see you guys tomorrow. So I'm back to back this week, back to back days. Tomorrow, we're going to be shifting the focus to something a little more taboo. I am going to be having a real life energy vampire on tomorrow. So that's going to be fun. It's going to be later, 9 p.m. He's a good one, guys, though. He's not like an evil energy vampire like you're taught. But anyways, enjoy the rest of your night. And Rob, hang out for a minute.